Eshani, aka Total Makeup Junkie 101. So today I have a video all about the new Huda Beauty eyeshadow palette. This is the Textured Shadows palette, the Rose Gold edition. That is going to make me think that there will be multiple editions of this shadow palette, and I have some pretty intense thoughts on this palette, honestly. Lots of you guys wanted to know my opinion on this because it is a little bit more difficult to purchase. It's also quite expensive, and I just want to break it down for you guys and let you know what I honestly think. First and foremost, the palette itself retails for $65. I purchased it directly off the Huda Beauty website, but I know that on November 6th, it will be available on the Sephora website. Here's what the outer sleeve of the palette looks like. When I saw the promo pictures, I thought this is what the actual front of the palette would be, but unfortunately, this is what the actual palette looks like. I don't know if you guys can tell just on the camera, but this palette is really cheap. I mean, it's made with a very kind of like flimsy-ish cardboard. It's not very hefty, it's not weighty, it doesn't feel nice. For example, a Z palette is also made of cardboard, but I feel like a Z palette has a nice weight to it. It really does feel like a luxury cardboard, and this doesn't. Now, because I did purchase this directly off the Huda Beauty website, it did ship from Dubai, and it actually got here really quickly considering it's like halfway around the world. It wasn't actually shipped in a box. It was shipped in like one of those packaging mailers that you would send like clothing in, for example. So because of that, the palette did get a little banged up. Luckily, none of my shadows came broken, but like the edges and the corners of the palette are kind of smushed, and once again that just kind of speaks to the quality of the cardboard itself. But anyways, this is what the inside of the palette looks like. You do get 18 shadows. The color range is right in line with what's trendy right now, those kinds of warmer, kind of rusty, neutral shades. Now, it says it right in the title of this palette. This is a textured eyeshadow palette. So many of these shadows, particularly the ones on the top row, are a very chunky, glittery, foiled finish. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and just show you guys swatches of everything you get in this palette. I swatched it in rows across. So here's the top row of the palette. From left to right, we have Dubai, Fling, 24K, Rose Gold, Trust Fund, and Angelic. You can tell that those first 5 shades in the row are that kind of really chunky, foiled, flaky finish. Here's the second row in the palette. From left to right, we have hashtag Blessed, Bossy, Flamingo, Shy, Bay, and Moon Dust. The middle 4 shades in this row are all a matte finish. Just the first color is a flaky foil, and the last color is more of a shimmer. And here's the final row in the palette. From left to right, we have Black Truffle, Suede, Cocoa, Man Eater, Henna, and Sandalwood. Every single color in this last row is all matte finish. So I don't know if you guys could tell by the swatches, but this palette was a major disappointment. I'm just gonna say it as it is. This was one of the most hyped up palettes that I have ever seen, so much so that the website was crashing. It took me like all night to be able to actually get my hands on it, and once I got it in my hands, I was very disappointed. First off, the size of the palette is really small. For 18 shadows, I was expecting something a little bit bigger, a little bit more substantial. But then after I got over my initial disappointment with the size and the actual, outer packaging, I thought to myself, you know what? If the quality of the product is amazing, I can put everything else aside. Unfortunately for me, the quality is very average. There are 3 distinct finishes that I can kind of tell in this palette. You've got those really flaky foiled shadows. You've got a couple of kind of like shimmery or metallic finish, and then you've got a lot of matte. So as for that flaky, chunky, the textured shadows, they are truly textured to the point where they are very difficult to use. They look really strange on the eye. I played with these quite a few times. I used them over a glitter glue. I used them directly over a primer. I used them over a base. I did a combination of everything. I foiled them. I used them dry. I used them with my finger. I used them with stiff brushes. And honestly, I could not get them to look good. I've got the color Rose Gold, which is this one right here, packed all over my lid. I used it on top of a colored base as well as a glitter glue, and I used it with my finger, which is the way that they recommend applying it. Just for reference, on the back of this box here, it does say directions: apply gently around the eyes with a brush. Foil textures deliver the maximum payoff when applied with fingertips. They emphasize any amount of texture you have on your eyelids, and I don't even have that much texture. I'm only 23 years old. I don't have crepey eyelids. I don't have wrinkles or anything really going on in my eye area. I could only imagine if you did have any kind of texture going on your eyelids, these would not look very good. It's almost like you're trying to attach little flakes of plastic or something onto your eye and make it look really smooth and seamless. It just doesn't work. They're too chunky in my opinion. In terms of the kind of metallic shadows, which would be these two right here, those are really, really beautiful. They go on like any really nice, really luxury metallic shadow. I've used those with brushes. They work excellent. I've used them with my finger. They also work excellent. Those are really nice. And then you have the mattes, which is pretty much the majority of this palette. All four of these colors, as well as the entire bottom row, is all matte. I was expecting a lot out of the mattes because for a $65 shadow palette, I can't say it enough, it has to be good quality. The mattes are average. You guys probably saw in the swatches, they are patchy, they are fairly dry. You do have to build them up, and they do take quite a bit of blending to really get a nice blend or fade going. The quality of these mattes doesn't even come close to my Viseart mattes or even my Urban Decay mattes, or even the Anastasia mattes that they've been putting out in their new palettes. The texture of these mattes just doesn't compare in my eyes. It's not seamless to blend. It's not very pigmented. It can look patchy. I'm disappointed. One thing I can say that is a great thing about this palette is the color range. I think this palette is put together very, very nicely. You have nice mattes for highlighting, transition, outer corner, things to warm up, liner shades, and then you do have the foiled shadows that are in the appropriate shades that you would want to pack all over your eyelid. But just the quality, the packaging, everything else, it makes me want more. Just as a comparison, I did want to show this palette next to the Anastasia Modern Renaissance palette because I feel like this is a palette that a lot of people already have, and they have some similar shades. So here are those palettes next to each other. You guys can see that the Modern Renaissance palette has 14 shadows, whereas the Huda Beauty has 18, but the Modern Renaissance doesn't have any of those overly chunky, flaky shades that, in my opinion, just don't work that well. The Modern Renaissance palette is $42, the Huda Beauty is $65. In my opinion, I prefer the Anastasia formula. I prefer the colors that are in the Modern Renaissance palette. I think if you already have this palette, just stick to it. Now, before I wrap up this video, let me go ahead and give you guys some of the nitty-gritty details on this palette. This palette is made in Italy, so I think that is really nice. You are getting 18 shades at $65. That means you are paying $3.61 per shade. Each of these pans hold 1 gram of product, meaning once again, you're getting 18 grams total, meaning you are paying $3.61 per gram of product. That's not really a bad price. I do think 18 grams is a fairly generous amount of product, but I don't know. The quality left something to be desired. You guys can see there are palettes that can give you a very similar look that are already on the market, and honestly, I don't think any of the colors in here are very unique or very stand out, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you haven't got this palette yet and you were kind of on the fence, I would say jump off the fence and don't get it. I don't think you would be overly impressed with it. So there you have it, my thoughts on the Huda Beauty Textured Shadow Palette Rose Gold Edition. I'm assuming there will be other editions coming out in the future, and honestly, I will not be purchasing. I was very disappointed in this palette. And just to slightly clear the air, I know that Huda Beauty, it's a newer brand, it is an indie brand, it's only available in very exclusive quantity and in very specific places. But despite all of that, I do think when you are charging such a high price, higher than any other mainstream palette, I get it, you're not ordering in massive quantities like Anastasia is, but at the same time, for the price, I do expect something unique, or at the very least, something that is just as good of quality, if not better, than any of the mainstream products, and I genuinely don't feel like this is it. So anyways, that is everything. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys haven't checked out any of my other holiday hoopla videos, I will link my holiday hoopla playlist in the description box down below. Be sure that you subscribe to my channel because I do have some other really exciting review videos coming up very soon. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will talk to you guys in my next video on Saturday. I will see you then. Bye! Getting 12 shades, and you can see the actual color selection is very fall. It has the same layout as any of the other Mega Pro palettes. You get 2 rows of mattes and 2 rows of shimmer, and if you guys